better sense. Question number 5, Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Justice and asks, what are the specific assumptions based on incorrect facts demonstrating some misunderstanding of New Zealand law that she alleges are contained in the report of Justice Binnie concerning the application by Mr Bain for compensation for wrongful conviction and imprisonment?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, I stated in my media release that, quote, my concerns are broadly that the report appeared to contain assumptions based on incorrect facts and showed a misunderstanding of New Zealand law, end quote. Prior to giving examples, I just need to give a little bit of context to this. I can advise the House an independent peer review of the first Binnie advice is being done by the Honourable Robert Fisher QC, and I'm considering the public request made by Mr Bain supporters to release both these reports or advice to me before Cabinet's made its decision. In relation to one of the things I'm considering is whether or not it's going to be Mr Bain's interest or the interest of justice to do so. But in relation to the examples sought, there are many. I'll give the House 2 of those. The first is in relying on incorrect understanding of what has been given in evidence. In this case, Justice Binnie asserts that a named scientist testified at the first trial that he had chemically enhanced the prints and later sought to resolve from this. The reference to chemical enhancement was an error on a label attached to a fingerprint, and this was explained as such by the named scientist at the retrial. A second, in relation to assumptions as to the correctness of submissions on the law, Justice Binnie appears to have assumed to be correct Mr Karam's submission that the adverse inferences should be drawn against the Crown case on the basis of evidence that is no longer available. This is incompatible with the onus of proof being on Mr Bain in this particular case, because this is in fact a request for Cabinet to use its discretion, and that's very clearly wrong.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Having summarised some of her criticisms of Justice Binnie's report, why does she not simply release it in full so that the taxpayers who've already paid over $400,000 for it can assess for themselves whether those criticisms are fair? Or is the prospect of dropping it in the press gallery just before Christmas in the hope of a dead news period just too tempting for her?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, I'm not going to rise to that particular bait and the barb, because frankly it doesn't actually do the member justice. In fact, I think it's important to consider the fact I've already answered the question, that I am considering it. I am awaiting the report or the advice to me from the Honourable Rob Fisher QC, a former High Court judge in New Zealand, and I expect to have that either today or tomorrow. I expect that once I have that, I'm going to consider whether or not to release both reports. Because of the concerns that are out in the public, and clearly Mr Bain is concerned and his supporters are concerned, I want to make sure that we have information that can be relied on.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Has Robert Fisher QC received the same level of disclosure of documents and other material afforded to Justice Binnie by her predecessor, and in particular, will he be given access to any material produced by the Crown Law Office or other officials that contain analysis that is critical of Justice Binnie's report?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, I can advise the member that Mr Fisher, from memory, has not been provided with any Crown Law advice. It is a matter which the Attorney-General has not waived privilege on, and I think it's important to note that Mr Fisher's advice to me will be a peer review of Justice Binnie's report. It is not, in fact, under the same terms of reference that Justice Binnie was provided by my predecessor.
Charles Chauvel.
In light of that answer, what were the terms of reference given to Mr Fisher QC, and how can the public have any confidence that the fruits of that exercise will bear out the criticisms that she has made of Justice Binnie's report if he hasn't seen those criticisms, a summary of them, or the advice leading to them?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Sorry, Mr Speaker, could you ask the member to repeat his question?
Certainly. Charles Chauvel, please.
How can the public be confident, in light of her question, that the result of Robert Fisher QC's review of the report by Justice Binnie can be comprehensive or satisfying in light of the fact that he appears not to have had any access to the analysis that she clearly has had of criticism of the report.
The Honourable Judith.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think that the Honourable Justice Fisher's advice to me will be comprehensive, and I expect that the terms of reference that Justice Binnie was provided by my predecessor will either be contained in that report or I will be happy to provide them.
Question number 6, Dr Paul Hutchison.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Health, what progress has the government made